The arena was alive with anticipation. Every eye was glued to the center, where legends and myths often collide. Today, it wasn't just another fight. It was a showdown that would be remembered for generations. On one side stood the so-called world's strongest fighter, a man whose sheer size and reputation made crowds tremble. He had dominated every opponent in his path, and whispers in the crowd called him unbeatable. On the other side, quietly and calmly, stepped Bruce Lee. Bruce Lee was smaller, leaner, and looked almost fragile compared to the towering figure before him. But anyone who truly knew martial arts understood something the crowd hadn't yet realized. Speed, precision, and mindset could shatter brute strength. Bruce's eyes were focused, unwavering, scanning every movement, calculating every possibility. The tension in the arena was almost tangible, a charged energy that made hearts pound faster with each second. Spectators exchanged nervous glances, unsure who would strike first. The strongest fighter flexed and cracked his knuckles, confident that his size alone would intimidate Bruce. The murmurs of the crowd echoed the same thought. How could someone so small stand a chance? But Bruce wasn't fazed. His presence alone demanded attention. Calm, unshakable, almost otherworldly. And then the mental battle began. Before any physical contact, a silent war raged between them. The strongest fighter's confidence bristled like electricity in the air, while Bruce Lee's stillness exuded control. Every second stretched painfully long, and the crowd collectively held their breath. It was a test not just of physical strength, but of focus, strategy, and mastery. The question hanging in the air was impossible to ignore. Who would dominate the fight in those first critical seconds? The stage was set for a moment that would leave the world speechless, a moment where history could change in a heartbeat. If you could witness one fight in history, whose would it be? Comment your thoughts below. The arena seemed to pause, as if the entire world knew something extraordinary was about to unfold. And in the shadows of anticipation, Bruce Lee's legendary speed and precision waited silently for the perfect moment. The crowd's roar intensified as the so-called world's strongest fighter flexed his massive arms, each muscle coiled like a spring ready to explode. Whispers of his victories echoed through the arena, tales of opponents thrown across the ring, defeated before they even understood what hit them. To the untrained eye, he was unstoppable, a living wall of power. Yet, in the opposite corner, Bruce Lee remained calm. He wasn't pacing, he wasn't shouting, and he didn't need to. His presence alone seemed to command the room. Every eye in the arena was drawn to him, as if sensing that something extraordinary was about to happen. Bruce's muscles were coiled, his stance perfectly balanced, but it was the intensity in his gaze that sent a shiver through the audience. He wasn't just observing, he was calculating. Every movement, every breath of his opponent, every flicker of muscle was being noted, stored, and analyzed. The strongest fighter sneered, thinking size and strength were enough to intimidate this seemingly smaller man. "This will be easy," he muttered under his breath, a confidence built on years of victories. The audience, too, felt the imbalance. Many had already placed their bets mentally. The giant would dominate, and Bruce Lee would be overpowered within seconds. But in that moment, no one could predict what was about to unfold. Time seemed to stretch. The crowd collectively held its breath as Bruce Lee took a subtle step forward, just enough to shift the weight of his stance. Every eye in the arena watched his hands, poised like lightning waiting to strike. The strongest fighter's confidence faltered slightly. There was something different about this calm, measured approach. It was the kind of focus that didn't just fight the body, it commanded the mind. And then, almost imperceptibly, Bruce Lee's body coiled like a spring ready to release. The air felt charged, thick with anticipation, as if the arena itself knew a storm was coming. Every spectator, from the front row to the farthest balcony, leaned forward, hearts pounding. In that tense silence, an invisible question hovered above them all. Could speed, precision, and mental focus truly defeat raw strength? The answer the world was about to see. Do you think raw strength is more important than speed and technique in a fight? Comment below with your thoughts, and tell us which country or city you're watching from. The crowd erupted with chatter, shouting their guesses and placing mental bets. Bruce Lee didn't flinch. He didn't respond to the taunts or the gasps. He simply stood, waiting for the perfect opening, his entire being a mix of focus, control, and anticipation. Every second that ticked by built the tension higher, trapping the audience mentally, forcing them to imagine the impending clash in excruciating detail. Even the strongest fighter began to feel the weight of Bruce's presence. It was subtle but undeniable, a pressure that went beyond physicality. He had faced many challengers before, but none had radiated the quiet dominance Bruce exuded. It was the kind of power that didn't rely on brute force alone. It came from the mind, the strategy, and the ability to anticipate every reaction. The stage was set. The tension was unbearable. Every spectator felt it. This was no ordinary fight. In just a few heartbeats, the world would witness something that would redefine their understanding of speed, strength, and mastery. Bruce Lee wasn't just ready. He was inevitable. The arena seemed to hold its breath. Time had slowed. Every spectator, every fighter, every whisper in the crowd had faded into silence, replaced by the crackling energy of anticipation. In the center of the ring, Bruce Lee and the world's strongest fighter faced each other, each waiting for the other to make the first move. The giant exuded raw power, every muscle tense, ready to crush. Bruce, in contrast, radiated calm control, as if the fight had already been decided in his mind. Seconds stretched like hours. Bruce's eyes locked on his opponent, unblinking, unyielding. He didn't flinch at the size or strength before him. He didn't even react to the sneers or nervous murmurs from the crowd. He was a master of focus, a living embodiment of discipline. Every fiber of his being was tuned to the smallest detail. The way the opponent's shoulders shifted, the faint twitch of his eyes, the barely perceptible weight shift in his stance. The strongest fighter, for the first time in his career, felt an unfamiliar unease. He had faced giants, legends, champions, but never someone who seemed entirely untouchable despite their smaller frame. His confidence wavered, the seconds now feeling heavier. He adjusted his stance, clenched his fists tighter, and flexed his muscles, hoping to intimidate Bruce. Yet with every motion, Bruce remained unshaken, like a calm storm gathering power, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Around the ring, spectators leaned forward instinctively, feeling the tension in their bones. They could sense the mental war before the physical one. Bruce Lee didn't just fight with his fists. He fought with anticipation, with intelligence, with a precision that seemed almost supernatural. Every second added to the suspense, trapping the audience mentally, making them imagine the impact before it even happened. The strongest fighter took a breath, readying himself. His chest rose and fell, each exhale brimming with confidence, but there was a subtle flicker of doubt in his eyes. He had never been studied like this before, never observed with such intensity. Bruce's calmness was unnerving. It was a force on its own, invisible but heavy, pressing down on the arena like a silent weight. And then, in the midst of the tense silence, Bruce moved, just slightly, almost imperceptibly. It was a shift of weight, a micro-adjustment in stance. The kind that only a master notices, but it changed everything. The strongest fighter's eyes followed, sensing an opening that wasn't really there. That moment, the silent countdown, was all Bruce needed. Every heartbeat in the audience skipped. Everyone felt it. The storm was about to break. The crowd collectively held its breath, trapped in the suspense. There was no turning back. Every second that ticked by made the outcome feel inevitable, yet impossible to predict. The anticipation was like electricity in the air, making hearts pound and palms sweat. They weren't just watching a fight. They were experiencing the raw, mental tension of a legend preparing to strike. Have you ever underestimated someone who completely surprised you? Tell us your story in the comments below. The crowd could feel the shift in the air. The outcome was no longer just a contest of strength. It was a battle of minds, reflexes, and timing. Bruce Lee's speed, precision, and focus had already started to control the narrative, mentally outmaneuvering the man who had relied solely on raw power. The seconds stretched, suspended in time, every eye fixed on Bruce. The arena, the fighters, the crowd, they were all trapped in the anticipation of what would happen next. The legend wasn't just about punches or kicks. It was about dominating the mind of the opponent before even landing a blow. In that moment, Bruce Lee had already begun his victory, even before the first strike had landed. The arena's silence shattered in a heartbeat as Bruce Lee made his first subtle motion. It was barely perceptible, a shift of his weight, the faintest rotation of his shoulders. But for anyone watching closely, it was the signal that everything was about to change. The world's strongest fighter, brimming with confidence moments ago, barely noticed. He was still calculating Bruce's size, thinking strength alone could carry him to victory. He didn't see the storm quietly coiling before him. Then it happened. In a flash, almost too quick to comprehend, Bruce's fist cut through the air. Every spectator felt it in their bones before they saw it. The speed was blinding, precise, and devastating. The strongest fighter reacted too slowly. Muscle and power were useless against perfect timing and precision. The audience gasped collectively, trapped mentally by the impossible speed. Hearts pounded as jaws dropped. No one had seen anything like it, and yet every eye was glued, unable to look away. Bruce Lee's movement was a blur, his technique flawless. It wasn't just about power. It was the intelligence behind it, the calculation of angles, the reading of the opponent's subtle shifts, the anticipation of every reaction. He moved like lightning, but with a rhythm and control that made each strike intentional, precise, and unmissable. Every punch, every feint, every step was a demonstration of mastery beyond physicality. This was the mind of a genius at work. The world's strongest fighter tried to respond, swinging with a brute force that had demolished countless challengers. But Bruce was already elsewhere, already anticipating the next moment, already dominating the mental space of the ring. Every strike from the giant was met with near-miss counters, evasions, and movements so fluid they seemed choreographed. The crowd could feel the tension climbing higher with each second, trapped in awe, wondering, how could one man move like this against such overwhelming strength? The spectators whispered in disbelief. Did you see that? He's too fast. Impossible. The arena became a web of anticipation, every heart racing as Bruce's relentless precision carved the rhythm of the fight. He wasn't just hitting, he was controlling the space, the timing, and the mind of his opponent. The strongest fighter's confidence wavered, replaced by the dawning realization that strength alone wouldn't save him today. And then, in one perfectly timed motion, Bruce struck again. This wasn't just a punch, it was a mental shockwave. The strongest fighter's guard faltered. His timing was off. Every second counted, and in those seconds, Bruce Lee had turned the fight entirely in his favor. The audience was trapped mentally, imagining the impact, feeling the intensity, and experiencing the fight as if they were part of it. The air itself seemed to vibrate with the force of Bruce's presence. It wasn't just his fists, it was his mindset, his anticipation, and the sheer inevitability of his movements. Each strike told a story of dedication, years of training, and an understanding of the human body and mind that few could ever hope to achieve. The fight had shifted from a contest of muscle to a demonstration of genius. The strongest fighter tried to regain control, throwing heavy swings, but Bruce's movements were already anticipating him, flowing around each attack with uncanny precision. The audience's adrenaline surged. They weren't just watching a fight. They were witnessing history, mentally trapped by the speed, precision, and absolute mastery of one man. Every second was a lesson, a thrill, and a shock to the senses that it was clear now. Bruce Lee had claimed the mental battlefield before even landing the decisive blow. The strongest fighter's confidence, built over years of victories, was crumbling under the weight of anticipation, precision, and overwhelming skill. The audience could feel the turning point, the moment where a legend doesn't just win with fists, but with control over the mind and timing of his opponent. The stage was set for the moment everyone had been waiting for. In the blink of an eye, Bruce Lee's technique, speed, and focus were about to deliver the unforgettable strike that would cement this fight in history. The arena seemed suspended in time. Every heartbeat, every exhale, every gasp from the audience amplified the tension to a nearly unbearable level. Bruce Lee had already demonstrated his unmatched speed and precision, but now it was time. The moment that would become legendary. The crowd leaned forward as if drawn by an invisible force, every pair of eyes glued to the two fighters in the center. The strongest fighter, colossal and intimidating, tried to regain composure. His muscles tensed like coiled springs, ready to strike, yet there was a flicker of hesitation in his eyes. The countless victories that had defined his career now felt like fragile memories in the presence of Bruce Lee's unshakable calm. Every instinct he relied on, raw strength, power, intimidation, was no longer enough. Bruce had already taken control of the mental battlefield. And then it happened. Bruce Lee moved with a speed that seemed impossible for the human eye to follow. In an instant, he closed the distance, his fist a blur of controlled power. There was no wasted motion, no hesitation. Every movement was perfect, precise, and devastating. The strongest fighter reacted, but too late. One perfectly calculated strike landed with such impact that it was impossible to ignore. The audience gasped as if the air itself had been knocked out of them. The force of Bruce's punch sent shockwaves through the arena, not only physically, but mentally. The audience could feel it in their bones. The strongest fighter stumbled, his feet failing to keep pace with the speed and precision that Bruce had unleashed. 1, 2, 3 steps backward, and then he hit the ground. Silence followed, brief, stunned silence, before it erupted into chaos. Spectators jumped to their feet, unable to contain their awe. They just witnessed history. The punch wasn't just a strike. It was a demonstration of absolute mastery over mind, body, and timing. Bruce Lee had won in mere seconds, and the sheer inevitability of it left the crowd mentally and emotionally trapped in disbelief. Every motion, every detail of Bruce's attack was a lesson in perfection. It wasn't just about hitting harder than your opponent. It was about anticipating, controlling, and dominating the battlefield. In those 6 seconds, Bruce Lee had redefined what it meant to be a fighter. Strength alone could not overcome intelligence, precision, and flawless technique. The strongest fighter's reputation, built over years of triumphs, had been toppled in the blink of an eye. The audience felt the full weight of the moment. The shock, the awe, the admiration, it all converged, trapping viewers in a whirlwind of emotion. They weren't just watching a knockout. They were experiencing the overwhelming power of skill, preparation, and mental dominance. Bruce Lee's calm demeanor after the strike amplified the spectacle. He didn't celebrate, didn't gloat. He simply returned to his stance, composed and serene, like a master who had completed what he already knew he could. It was more than a fight. It was a demonstration of the principles that had made Bruce Lee legendary. Discipline, anticipation, mental control, and perfect timing. The strongest fighter lay stunned, physically and mentally defeated. The arena, once filled with confident whispers about raw power, now echoed with the realization that speed, technique, and strategy were supreme. What do you think made Bruce Lee unbeatable? Speed, technique, or mindset? Comment your thoughts below. As the crowd roared, Bruce Lee's presence remained unshaken. He had claimed victory not just with a punch, but with mental mastery. The audience, trapped in awe and excitement, could barely process the speed and perfection they had witnessed. It was 6 seconds that changed history. 6 seconds that would inspire generations to come. And in that moment, the legend of Bruce Lee became more than stories. It became reality, etched into the minds and hearts of everyone who had witnessed it. The arena erupted in chaos the moment the world's strongest fighter hit the ground. Gasps, shouts, and a mixture of disbelief and awe rippled through the crowd. People were frozen in place, unable to process the speed and precision they had just witnessed. 6 seconds. That's all it had taken for Bruce Lee to demonstrate what many had only ever imagined in legend. The reality of it was almost too much to comprehend. The fallen fighter struggled to regain his bearings. His massive frame trembled, not from pain alone, but from the mental shock of being outmatched so completely. For a man whose strength had dominated arenas across the globe, defeat had never felt so humbling or so swift. Bruce Lee, meanwhile, remained composed. There was no celebration, no triumphant shout, just calm mastery. He exuded a quiet confidence that reinforced the truth of what everyone already knew. Skill and intelligence had triumphed over sheer strength. Spectators were still in disbelief. Every eye was fixed on Bruce Lee, as if willing themselves to understand how one man could move with such speed and clarity. The crowd's reaction was visceral. People stood, cheering, clapping, and some even shaking their heads in wonder. It wasn't just a fight, it was a lesson, a display of control, strategy, and mental dominance that went far beyond physicality. As the reality sank in, murmurs spread throughout the arena. People discussed what they had just witnessed. He didn't even flinch. Did you see how fast that was? Strength alone isn't enough anymore. Bruce Lee had done more than win. He had redefined what it meant to be a fighter. The strongest man had been undone not by brute force, but by precision, focus, and mental acuity. The fighter slowly rose to his feet, a mix of exhaustion, disbelief, and newfound respect evident on his face. The crowd recognized the gravity of the moment. They had just witnessed history. Bruce Lee didn't approach to gloat or taunt. Instead, he nodded respectfully, a subtle acknowledgement of the man who had been a formidable opponent. That humility, paired with his unmatched skill, made the victory even more profound. Even outside the arena, the story spread quickly in whispers, conversations, and discussions. The 6-second knockout wasn't just a spectacle. It was a testament to the power of mastery over mere size or raw strength. Bruce Lee's approach, calm and precise, emphasized that fighting was as much about mental preparation, anticipation, and intelligence as it was about physical ability. The lesson resonated deeply with everyone present, leaving a lasting emotional impact. Have you ever seen someone stay calm and completely dominate a situation like this? Share your story in the comments. The crowd began to settle, still buzzing from the adrenaline. They were no longer just spectators. They had been part of something extraordinary. The combination of awe, shock, and inspiration trapped them mentally, making the moment linger far longer than the fight itself. Bruce Lee's mental and physical mastery had created an indelible impression, one that would be discussed for years to come. As the strongest fighter regained composure and walked to the side, Bruce Lee returned to the center, standing calmly as the crowd roared around him. There was no arrogance, no showmanship, just the quiet, powerful presence of a legend who had proven, in 6 seconds, that skill, timing, and focus always triumph over raw power. For the audience, the emotional payoff was overwhelming. The 6 seconds weren't just about the physical knockout. They were a lesson in strategy, patience, and the mental game of combat. It was a moment that left spectators inspired, amazed, and mentally trapped in the intensity of what had just unfolded. The roar of the crowd still echoed in the arena long after the fight ended. People were cheering, some clapping in disbelief, others shaking their heads in amazement. They had witnessed history, not just a knockout, but a lesson in mastery, discipline, and mental dominance. Bruce Lee had not only defeated the world's strongest fighter in a mere 6 seconds, but he had also demonstrated that greatness is built on precision, focus, and unwavering control. Outside the arena, word of the fight spread like wildfire. Conversations erupted about the impossible speed, the unmatched technique, and the mental calm that had defined Bruce Lee's victory. People from all walks of life were inspired. Martial artists studied the fight for lessons. Fans marveled at the legend in action, and even casual observers recognized the truth. Strength alone is not enough. It's the combination of mind, body, and timing that creates true mastery. The strongest fighter, though humbled, had gained something far more valuable than victory: respect. He understood that Bruce Lee's power went beyond muscles. It came from years of disciplined training, mental sharpness, and an unshakable mindset. It was a humbling experience, but one that reinforced the essence of martial arts: respect, self-control, and intelligence triumph over brute force. For the audience, the lesson was clear and emotional. They had been mentally and emotionally trapped in the intensity of the fight, experiencing it as if they were part of it. Every punch, every movement, and every calculated step had left a mark on their imagination. It was a moment that would inspire them, challenge them, and push them to reconsider what true strength really means. Bruce Lee stood quietly in the center, acknowledging the crowd with a nod. There was no gloating, no self-aggrandizement, just calm confidence. His victory wasn't about humiliation. It was about proving the power of mastery, focus, and mental dominance. That presence, humble yet commanding, left an impression far deeper than the knockout itself. Stories of this fight traveled beyond the arena. Teachers, athletes, and fans spoke about it in awe. Bruce Lee's philosophy of combining mental clarity with physical skill resonated with people across the globe. He became more than a fighter. He became a symbol of what discipline, intelligence, and self-control can achieve. In 6 seconds, he had created a moment that transcended sport. It became legend. If you've ever been blown away by someone's skill and focus, type legend in the comments and share your story. Even years later, the lesson of that 6-second knockout remains powerful. It reminds us that preparation, focus, and mental control can overcome even the most intimidating challenges. Bruce Lee's victory wasn't just physical. It was a triumph of the mind, leaving an enduring legacy that continues to inspire fighters, fans, and anyone striving to master their craft. As the final echoes of cheers faded, the world realized something extraordinary. Greatness isn't measured by strength alone. It's measured by mastery, discipline, and the courage to act decisively at the perfect moment. Bruce Lee had shown this in the most unforgettable way, leaving a mark on history, hearts, and minds that would never be forgotten.